Hey, Alan, we saw you log in, so we thought we'd say hello. How are you doing?
He's not going to be able to talk.
Haha, that's right. So it'll be like hanging out with me ordinarily, Alan. I'll do all the talking and you will do all the listening. Except we don't have cigars.
Yeah.
I'm glad you could make it. Alan and I were chatting the other night, and he was mentioning that lead generation was a priority for him, so I sent him the link.
I'm going to go ahead and turn on chat for the meeting anyways. Why not?
Okay.
So, Alan, there should be a chat thing if you want to say hello, but no AIs. Good morning. Glad to have you here.
Between the two of you, Ian and Alan are my like private security team when I'm out of town wandering aimlessly through the streets of darkened, dangerous cities.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. The significant lack of any sort of safety protocols that you follow.
Um, I, yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Just
Yeah, it
figure if I
is.
mind my own business, I'll be fine.
Uh-huh.
Except I don't do that either.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, I did get to meet a guy who has a crow that lives on his shoulder, and a couple of like very interesting people from New Orleans. It is the top of the hour, so we are gonna get started. No kidding. That's true, Alan. We'll have to talk about that someday off of camera, but your instincts were bang on in New Orleans. His spidey senses were tingling and a bunch of people got trapped on Bourbon Street. So anyway, we're going to start now. So, welcome everybody. My name is Carrie Richardson, and I'm joined today by my partner in business and marriage, and also like minor crimes, Ian Richardson.
Hello,
Yeah,
hello, everybody.
we are joining from different parts of the world today. I am in Canada, and Ian is at home in Michigan, and the weather apparently is significantly better in Michigan, and I am envious.
Yeah, I mean it's not nice, so better is being you have to qualify that. Both areas suck compared to anywhere in the South.
All right. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Ian and I, we are the founders of Fox and Crow. And our, if you're not familiar with us, our past may be interesting to you. I previously owned a lead generation agency for managed service providers. I founded that in 2014 and I exited in 2021. Ian founded a managed service provider in Michigan that focused on healthcare, and he exited from that business around the same time that I exited from Managed Sales Pros. And we founded Fox and Crow Group to solve some of the biggest problems we both saw around managed services sales. So, welcome everybody. There are two handouts that anybody registered for the event will receive. Look for those in your inbox from Tyler at foxcrowgroup.com. The first one is a self-assessment for MSP business owners that will help you identify whether or not it is time or whether or not it would be practical for you to outsource lead generation to a third party. And the other handout is a question list that I would use if I were going to vet a new solution partner to help me with sales or marketing. So, with all that being said, let's get started today. Ian, one of the things that you say on your profile is that you spent over $1 million trying to fix sales and marketing at your MSP. Tell us a little bit about what worked for you, what didn't, and why you started Fox and Crow Group.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for hopping on and joining us. So, Yeah, I spent well over $1 million on bad decisions, I like to say. And by bad decisions, it was bad hires, bad process, bad partners, bad strategy, bad efforts. Um, I'm a learn by the touch the stove type of guy. So I really like to touch the stove multiple times. So lessons don't sink in the first time I run into a wall. So really a fundamental lack of understanding drove a lot of the mistakes that I made throughout my time over at Doberman when it came to new logo acquisition, lead generation, etc. So one of the fundamental mismatches was thinking that activity was going to translate into outcomes. So it's not that we didn't do anything. We weren't standing outside holding a bucket out and praying for rain. But that activity was very surface level. And we tried a lot of different things. So we tried cold calling, we tried sending emails, we tried doing a website and advertising and networking and chambers and thought leadership. But the lack of a structured plan and understanding that the majority, and by majority, I'll say 90% of leads we talk to were not going to be ready at the first point of contact. They weren't even going to be ready at the 10th point of contact. So the one of the big fundamental lessons on failure was a lack of a long-term nurture game. And that really, really stuck out. It's not when someone says no, rarely is it a no and the door is shut. It's a no because of timing. It's a no because the current relationship is working. It's a no because there isn't some sort of pain urgency creating the desire to shift. And only over the course of struggling, trialing, failing for a good 5, 6 years did that lesson kind of emerge across the data. And I learned to say, oh, well, maybe we should shift gears here and start doing routine nurtures and kind of stumbled across the concept of a 90-day nurture cycle.
So, I mean, obviously, you were a client of Managed Sales Pros, so you're well aware of what goes into onboard, participating in, paying attention to a third-party managed outbound campaign. In your experience now, you're helping multiple MSPs identify, hire, train, and manage their own outbound initiatives. What is the big difference that you see between an outsourced campaign and a well-managed in-house campaign?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first and foremost, let me like set the stage. Like anyone doing activity can work. Okay. So an outsourced provider can work and an internal team can work. The different I would reframe the question as what do I see the difference between a well-run campaign and a not well-run campaign? So a lot of the times with outsourcers, what we see is the MSP isn't really looking for an outsourcer, they're looking for the ability to abdicate. And there's no relationship with someone doing the activity. For that activity to be effective and lead to the outcome you want, there is zero ability to abdicate at the organizational level. You have to be willing to be involved. So with a well-run internal campaign, that internal resource has a structured methodology that they follow, and that method covers it's soup to nuts, right? Like it is from top of funnel, this is a suspect, all the way through qualification, getting them into an appointment, doing discovery, value prop, close. And if you happen to have account managers, there has to be a structured function on account management long term to prevent early exit or churn cycles during initial term or directly after initial term. The same applies with an outsourcer. That outsourcer is providing certain components of that. If they're top of funnel, well, hey, they're putting appointments on the board, but there has to be a Park Avenue relationship. You have to have two-way street communication, and you have to be willing to be involved and have conversations and hold that third party accountable. You can't just say, all right, put appointments on the board, and I'm not going to give you feedback and support and treat you as an integral part of my team. All that outsourcer is doing is providing labor and process. Um, the other big difference is that outsourcers for outsourcing to work, look at your own MSP. The reason why MSPs get successful is standardization. You have certain technologies you use, you handle tickets a certain way, you build out SOPs and process, etc. An outsourcer is the same. They have to have SOPs and standards, and they're going to use the same play every single time with little to no customization to get the results that they determine. And what you're banking on is that their standardized process with zero tweaks is going to work better than you using a standardized process with an agent who can pivot at the last mile. Um, so that outsourcer is going to have a very, very standard script, but they're probably not going to, like, for example, when they're ready to pitch a decision maker on having a meeting with you, they're going to use maybe one of three pitches, where your sales rep could be pitching a different way to a lawyer versus a doctor versus a manufacturer versus a small company, big company, someone who's in the same town as you versus someone who's 2 hours away. All of those data points, well, those are different pitches that an internal rep will develop and deploy. An outsourcer doesn't have that type of administrative time. They have to kind of churn through a high volume of activity, and that's going to limit their effectiveness. So, um, just like some key fundamental tactical differences between outsourcing and internal, but the biggest flag I see is on both. The what determines a well-run campaign versus a campaign that's going to fail is the involvement at the MSP level. If they're not willing to be involved, if they're not willing to participate in the process, if they're not really leaning in, it's never going to work. And Carrie, I had we had so we've got a bunch of questions, folks. By the way, we have a bunch of questions that have either come up routinely, we thought up, or people fed over to us that they wanted to see in the recording. But if you guys got questions, throw them into the Q&A panel. We'll absolutely handle those as they come in as well. But you ran a managed sales pros for 10 years. You worked with hundreds of MSPs coast to coast, big regions, small regions, pretty much every state in the union, also across Canada. So you know when someone is ready. What tells you that an MSP is ready to work with an outsourced provider?
Uh, the biggest red flag for me that someone isn't ready is unrealistic expectations on what can be achieved in the first 90 days of activity in an outbound campaign. So if you think about a very cold list, you've never interacted with anyone, maybe you've joined a BNI group or you're involved in the chamber, but you haven't extended your business network out past those first few steps. You're not well known in the community. You don't have brand recognition. You're not backed by a large PE firm. You don't have money to burn. The expectations that an MSP would have coming in would be like, when am I going to get meetings? When am I going to get meetings? And regardless of how many times I said it's going to take us 6 months to get you to a point where you're getting meetings consistently, and it's going to take us 12 months to get you to a point where you're generating leads that will convert. It doesn't matter how many times I said that to people, people hear one more sentence after that than I never said, which is, but your campaign will be different because X. And that has not consistently been my experience. So having unrealistic expectations is kind of the first red flag that you're not ready to outsource. If you're expecting results that you've never been able to measure yourself, that's going to be a challenge, whether you're working with managed sales pros or any third-party sales or marketing vendor. If you've never tried to do the activity that you're outsourcing, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand what KPIs you're supposed to be measuring and what questions to ask. So that's one of the reasons I put together that handout. It'll give you every question you need to know to ask a third-party vendor and help you identify whether or not you're ready. The second biggest indicator that you're not ready for outsourcing is if you can't afford to lose the money you're going to spend on sales and marketing. So if you're not paying yourself a market standard CEO salary, for example, you're not paying yourself yet, can you really afford to start cutting checks for five or $6,000 a month to a third party vendor, or would that money be better spent in yours, better put into your own pocket? And pardon me, sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold here, and I'm finally the next indicator that it's going to be an issue is, can you afford to lose every dime that you spend on outsourcing? Nobody can guarantee that they're going to be able to generate leads for you. Nobody can guarantee that you'll close a single one of the leads that are generated. That's the same whether or not you hire a marketing agency or a lead generation agency. You're bound to a contract that you may or may not be able to get out of based on that isn't based on performance. It's just based on output. And if you can't afford to lose that money without it impacting your business negatively, it's not time to outsource. And we see people having the expendable income necessary to outsource around the time they hit the $2 million mark. And before that, most MSPs didn't start their company with a war chest that would be sufficient for paying a lead generation agency or paying a sales rep for that matter for that full year that you're going to need to start turning leads into new logos and revenue.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things that kind of bubbles up is that you mentioned that expectation piece with an ice cold list that has never heard of you. The one of the number one things we see and that I counsel both reps and the leadership that we might be we might be working with that has a rep reporting up into them is focused on untouched leads. So any sort of play to build enough, like if you think about that funnel, the top of the funnel is like this, and it gets all the way down to here, right? That's the definition of a funnel. People really don't think about that visual enough. At the way top of your funnel, you have thousands of leads, thousands of leads. And by running a well-oiled system, you could be taking those thousands of potential things and booking 4, 8, 12, 16, however many appointments per month that land 1, 2, 4 customers per month. That's what that's the funnel math is thousands to single, again, 4, 8, 10 to 1, 2, 3. That's how dramatic the math is. And so a lot of the time people ignore just how much has to go into the top. You have to really focus on touching the untouched leads. The way that you can get like the way that traction happens is by working the whole of the list, not just the same 50 things over and over and over again. You have to be touching all of these untouched areas over and over to be able to find who's ready now.
So Ian, what do you think an MSP has to gain by doing lead generation in-house versus outsourcing?
I mean, the number one thing is that you're building the muscle. So we worked with an MSP and inherited a rep. And good guy, good guy, nice guy, pleasant guy, but didn't have the dynamism and tonality and speed on feet to really get to recognize the signs and start pulling things into an appointment. But he was able to call and get some data points and stuff like that. And so by having that rep, he was there for, I mean, he was there for 6 months too long, but he was there for around 6 months working a list and then was exited out of the organization. That list was passed to a new rep. That new rep was able to pull forward and get 10 appointments in the first month of dialing into that list. And that's because that data, that building is transferable. It's not just about data points. It's not just about, hey, ABC Co. is at 123 Main and they're this industry and they have this many people, this many desktops, this many servers, whatever. Like, sure, that structured data is fine, but the real value is in the notes, the previous call history, the next steps, the sequence. When you're working with an outsourcer, almost all of them will give you a list. Hey, here's the leads that we worked and what we learned about them. Great. You don't know how many times they've been talked to. You don't know that, Mary, the receptionist, likes to talk about her son's football team, or that Bill, the decision maker, is only in on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and your best time to call him is 3:30 to 6:30, local business time. You don't know any of that. You don't have the next steps mapped out for every single thing. You don't know the dispositions of all those previous calls, when they're likely to answer, when they're not likely to answer. You only get that when you have a campaign that's worked by one team, one party, one area. And if your call agency is doing that, that stuff lives in their system. If you're doing that, it lives in your system. So you're building up mature data, you're building up the own engine, the muscle, and by having a rep internally, you being the MSP, you will learn what to watch for, what people struggle with, how to help people overcome challenges at the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, all the way down to the bottom. Even if you're working with a third party consultant or a coach, you're gonna be involved. There's gonna be some of that muscle and an institutional knowledge that starts to be built up. It's the same as when you start hiring service techs way back in the story. You hire that first tech, you're learning how to teach them, train them, coach them, support them, building out the SOPs and processes for them to succeed long term. So even if your first sales hire isn't a long-term hire, you gain benefit from that. You're able to start to learn what needs to happen and what works and what doesn't. You don't get that with an outsourcer. An outsourcer gives you speed off the block. And there's value to that. Again, I'm not trying to throw a bunch of shade on outsourcers. There is real value to using an outsourcer, but you have to think about what challenge are you trying to solve. So, Carrie, one of the questions I was really curious around, in this vein, what does an MSP need to have in place before outsourcing has a chance of working?
Ooh, so the first thing that always comes up is an MSP will say in a meeting, if you put me in front of them, I can close them. I heard that from every single MSP that I worked with over the course of 12 years. Every single MSP that I did a consult for over the course of 12 years. And all of them said the same thing. If you get us a meeting, we can close it. However, what they really meant was we've grown our business on referrals. And if you put me in front of somebody that someone else has already vouched for me with, I can close that deal. Most of them had no experience engaging with cold opportunities. So understanding the difference between a cold meeting and a referral meeting, if you're not familiar with conducting a sales discovery with a cold lead, that would be the first thing that I would focus on and work on is what's the difference between closing a deal with someone that was referred and trying to get something across the finish line. Because most of the time with a referral, you're 80% of the way there. Whereas with a cold appointment, you're 20% of the way there. So you need a clearly defined process. What does the handoff from the sales opportunity to the sales meeting look like? What kind of information is necessary in order for you to begin that meeting in a way that captures the prospect's attention? So it's great to have a meeting on the books with somebody, but if there is no information, if you have no formalized system or process that says, before you schedule a meeting, we need to know these things, you'll end up with meetings that are bad fits, for example. So if you're not qualifying on size or industry and your lead generation agency is just throwing leads down the pipe at you, you may end up having to spend hours and hours sitting through meetings with people only to find out that they had three computers and they have no interest in security posture. So learning how to qualify properly and use decision-making gates before you even get to the sales meeting is essential so that you're not burning the most expensive payroll you have in your business, which is your own. So you want a great process in place to manage leads before they become appointments. You need to understand how to get a cold appointment through to a discovery phase. You need to learn how to present a proposal effectively and when to write a proposal and when to just politely back away from an opportunity saying this isn't for us. And you should understand your market. Who are you competing with for these deals? Why is company Y winning over your business? So if company Y is winning all the law firms in your market and that's the market that you want to pursue, understanding their competitive advantage over yours, how your pricing adds up, where are they weak and where are you strong? That's going to be essential for you to be able to win business away from that competitor. Or if you're going into a multi-bid situation, you need to understand what questions will create a minefield for that business versus which ones are you going to step in it yourself. So if you have no sales process and you're just thinking like, we need leads, we need leads, we need leads, it's more important that you understand how to win when you've got a good qualified lead. You only need one good qualified lead. You don't need 10 poorly qualified opportunities. So understanding if you've got 10 on the board, which is the one that you're going to win on and how do you focus your attention there?
Mhm.
That's super important to understand before you let a third party start generating leads for you. You can generate all the leads in the world. If you don't know how to get them across the finish line, you're throwing that money in a paper shredder.
Okay. Let's yeah, that's super interesting and intriguing. One of the things we see routinely is like you talked about referrals and the difference between those conversations and a cold opportunity and it's it's intriguing because like the it's more than just getting to sit down with someone too. The discovery is smoother with a referral because there's that basis of trust. So much of getting people to open up and get to the point where they're feeling comfortable with you is that basis of trust. And when you have a referral, right? I don't know you, but I know Bob. I trust Bob. Bob trusts you. Now I trust you. They're more likely to share hidden details around pain. They're more likely to engage even if they're uncomfortable with budget. And they're more likely to have a belief that you can help, even if you're not that good at tying the ways you can help into specific pain. But when someone's cold, yeah, they're probably talking to you, but they're also talking to A, B, and C. And in lack of differentiation of how they feel, the only thing they can consider is price. And that's why people are always talking about this, well, price competition, the price pressure is too much. It's getting commoditized. It's really not. But the way that people are presenting is not grounded in this pain discovery, which the only way you'll win with cold outbound leads is to go really, really, really deep in discovery so that you quite literally sound and feel different and look different to that person than everyone else who kind of, scratched surface level and then stopped and started talking about, all right, well, our help desk and our 24/7, 365 managed security operations center will take care of that for you. And we got the best process and the best people, and our core values are better than their core values, and nobody gives a damn. Like that's the problem is there's this lack of fundamental skill set that doesn't get applied, and you don't need it with referral because that trust gives you such you're starting a 100-meter dash and you're at the 50-meter line. Like, yeah, it's easier to finish the race.
We've one of the things that we talk about a lot internally at Fox and Crow is how do you get more referrals? Since they're the easiest things to close, what does a well-defined referral generation process look like for an MSP? Because by the time MSPs are usually looking at lead generation, it's because there has been a significant incident that's impacting their revenue. So they've lost a cornerstone client, maybe that they built their MSP on. There's been some churn because of private equity. So through no fault of their own, sometimes the MSP has lost a huge chunk of revenue, and now they're scrambling to fill that gap. Or they've managed to get to the $1 million mark, but they've done so at the wrong price point. So you've got more clients than you can support who are paying you less than you deserve. And now you've got to start what we'd call pumpkin planning out low paying customers and replacing them with industry standard paying customers. That's usually when people reach out to managed sales pros for outsourcing. And it's a panic and a scramble. Like, we need to do this now. We're losing money. We're losing money. We're losing money. The time to do that was a year ago before that major event happened, right? Like, it's not time, like lead generation is not going to produce anything quickly. So if you're looking to replace a major contract, you have to budget for time to let that work. So we focus on a referral process here at Fox and Crow Group. You can generate more referrals. Unfortunately, you're going to have to develop some cold outbound skills in order to drag those new referrals across the finish line, ask people to provide you with more of them. So you can ask your clients for referrals. You can ask anybody you've done business with in the past for a referral, anybody that you go to a networking event. Like, there are so many different ways that you can push, pull, and drag referrals into your MSP, but following a process and a system makes that predictable and repeatable. Otherwise, you end up with more of a feast and famine. We got lots of referrals, and now we've got to scramble to get all these proposals out, and then nothing for 6 months. If you leave referrals up to your clients, not many people are talking about when they need IT support, right? Nobody's going to a party and talking about how terrible their IT service provider is or whether or not they've been backing up their systems lately. It just doesn't come up the way maybe some other opportunities might.
Hey, baby, do you back up your infrastructure? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I do. I do.
so the interesting thing that you mentioned there that I kind of want to dive in on is referrals. One of the more effective things that when we're, when myself or Taylor or someone on the team is working with a rep is getting your new logo person to start coordinating with account management. So, hey, I've been running this cold outreach for a while. I've got these 20 guys and gals that I'd love to talk with, and I can't get them on the phone at the office. Well, you've got the names, the industries, etc. You have this big list of customers you're currently working with. And all it takes is a little bit of cross layover, build a matrix. Hey, here are these 20 people. We want to get meetings with all of them. One by one, go through and get some research done. Do any of your clients know this person or may know this person? They connected on social, they on a board together, they in the same industry, they geographic neighbors, something like that. And you can build a little matrix of, all right, well, Susie knows one, two, and three, and Bob knows one, two, and five, and so on and so forth. And then that list can be passed over to your account manager to be bringing up in your TBRs, to be bringing up, and that specificity, right? Ask for the meetings you want. Don't ask, do you know anyone? Say, hey, I'm trying to meet Bob, Jim, and Sally at, ABC, XYZ, and 123. Would you be comfortable introducing me to any of those? Maybe they would, maybe they won't, but ask for the meeting you want. Don't ask for just generic stuff. Watch how the referral engine can come back in. The other big indicator, a lot of the times when we get called in, well, hey, referrals are good, but they're unpredictable and they've kind of leveled off. When I hear when they've leveled off, I sincerely would recommend looking at your own operational delivery. Referrals generally stop when something changes. So if you were getting referrals and yep, we were adding 6 to 8 customers per year and you're not adding 6 to 8 customers a year anymore, what operational changes have happened? And sometimes it happens, right? Sometimes maybe you've tapped every single person that all of these previous referral sources knew. But if someone was willing to refer you and they were referring you and referring you and referring you and referring you, and then suddenly they stop referring you, what changed in the relationship that's caused that lack of comfort? Were there a couple of referrals that you turned away because they didn't meet your ICP? Stuff like that. It is hard to turn away a referral. One of the things that I firmly believe is someone refers me over someone, even if I cannot do a long-term relationship, I'm going to try to move heaven and earth to give them all the value I can, give them all the advice I can, even if it's like, hey, I'm going to sink whatever 3 or 4 hours unpaid into working with this person to try to make sure they're okay, because then the referral was handed well. It was well handled. Even if we're not the fit, and I'll admit that right up front. Hey, I'm not the fit. Like I can't solve your problems because of X, Y, or Z, but I'd like to try to do as much as I can to help you out. That's a good taste in the referral's mouth, which gets back to the referral source, and they're going to keep referring you. So look at how you're saying no to a referral. Are you saying, hey, we're just not the right thing? Maybe go to Best Buy, or I'll pass you off to someone else? Or are you leaning in and providing value to that referral, even if it's kind of a little bit of a drain on the profit margin? Those two flags are kind of two sides of the referral engine coin. How specific are you getting, and how much are you tying cold outreach to your existing account management process to get meetings out of your customers? And how are you handling the unprompted referral that's just a bad fit? A lot of problems show up in both of those columns.
So looking back, Ian, I mean, clearly you and I have a relationship over and above our previous you were a client relationship. But back in the day when Doberman first made the decision to outsource, what do you wish that you'd asked that you didn't ask before proceeding?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, first and foremost, like, hey, what happens when we meet with someone and it doesn't go well? That's whatever. We took a meeting and it didn't work. Um, that would have been one. What do I need to have set up to make this successful? Probably would have been another one. Um, from when a meeting happens, like what do your most successful customers do from a meeting all the way through close, or and what do your most successful customers do to with opportunities they don't win? Um, what should I like what should I be working on to make sure I'm successful? So asking some good questions, getting a little bit more curious around things, and thinking about my process, my follow-up procedures, my the skill set mindset I was bringing into things. All of those would have been very, very helpful to lean into and look at up front. And I don't, you know, hindsight being 2020, I don't think I asked any of those.
Most MSPs didn't ask a lot of questions over and above how many leads can we expect and how many calls are you going to make for us every month. Those were the two big ones. And if you think about there's two things you can measure. You can measure outcomes and you can measure revenue. Like
Mhm.
ultimately, MSPs that closed deals were happy, and MSPs that didn't weren't.
Mhm.
So the outsourcing provider can only control outputs, they can't control outcomes. They're not responsible for anything that happens after the meeting is set. And so if something happens and that meeting cancels, getting those meetings back on the calendar, whose responsibility is that? Does that become the responsibility of you, or is it the responsibility of the third party group?
Mhm.
If it's your responsibility, the odds on you rescheduling that are next to nothing if you're not going to call them every day. So there has to be different processes in place for meetings that get scheduled, meetings that get canceled. You kind of have to think of all of the different scenarios where somebody may show up to a meeting, but oh, something happened that they have to leave early. If you think about your own business, for example, an MSP, especially an MSP at a high growth phase in their business, has problems that they have to solve immediately all the time. If that's your experience right now, outsourcing may not be the best choice for you, simply because if you can't make the meeting that you've scheduled with a prospective client because you've got a fire to fight within your company, the odds on them rescheduling that meeting are so low that you're not going to benefit as much. Anytime a third party is taking action on behalf of your business, you need to understand what the control factors are in that. So understanding what happens if somebody no shows is a big deal. Things happen. Ian, I mean, we're going back years and years when you think about outsourcing on behalf of Doberman. So let's talk a little bit more about what a company that is operationally mature, right? An MSP with say 3 to 5 million in revenue, where they have maybe a sales rep in place, or perhaps the owner has finally invested in learning how to sell, learning how to prospect, learning how to do discovery and close. What's the difference between an operationally mature MSP when it comes to sales and those smaller or less experienced IT owners?
Uh, well, I would say instead of I mean the differences will be haves and haves nots. But maybe looking at this from what if I was going to if I was going to start an MSP today after I'd gotten out of the hospital and been deemed, sane and sound of mind. For the sales engine, have a CRM. Invest in building that CRM out. So have a bunch of structured data fields, right? Staff, endpoints, servers, locations, that type of stuff. but also those qualification fields for prospecting. How do they deal with IT today? How long have they been doing it that way? How healthy is it? What's going wrong? You want to have pain points, kind of like for a little bit in the weeds, but pain points shouldn't be a text field. It should be a multi-select list because then you can run reports. You can't run reports on non-structured data. So a well-developed CRM with someone who understands that technology, the automations, the sequences, the templates, the processes all built into it, that's step one. Step two, have a methodology. Whether you're using Fox and Crows or Bob's off the street, I don't care, but get a methodology and follow it. You can't be winging it all the time. You can't try one thing one day and then completely try something different the other day. You have to put forward action over a period of time to get a baseline, and then you start to tweak where the dips are. That kind of leads into number three, the next big thing to set up a mature process. You have to have a systematic way of reviewing the data, reviewing the outputs, the results, and then pairing that review with coaching and counsel. So you could, however you're going to solve this, there's education, there's self-paced learning, there's reflection exercises, scrimmages, drills, practice. The old-fashioned just hang on the phone with the rep while they dial, and then after every dial, give them a debrief. You have to put in a multi-layered approach of coaching and support. If you and the famous thing around this is athletes, and it's used for a reason. When you look at a professional athlete, they have coaches, and a professional athlete demands coaching. Sales is just like athletics. You need to be spending a ton of time practicing before game day. You don't want the first time you're delivering a pitch to be when you get a decision maker on the phone. You don't want the first time that you're running through a new customer proposal to be with that new customer. You need to have practiced not only your proposal mechanism, but the specifics for that customer 5 to 10 times before it's game day. So having a robust coaching and support structure is critical. If you're a larger MSP, let's keep scaling up and go to the 10, 20, 50 million. You get a sales manager, and that sales manager's time is spent talking about, like where's the pipeline at? What's the next step on this thing? Where's the deal at? That is not an effective use of a sales manager's time. That is a nursemaid. Your sales rep should be putting that stuff in, and those one-to-ones should be around what questions you're scared to ask. There's this stuck deal. Let's practice on how you're going to do the approach and really deep consultative coaching reviews versus like creating pipeline reports and stuff. The CRM should do that for the manager. That should just be sitting live in a dashboard, not being manually compiled. Um, and the last component I would really talk about with that is kind of like the classic EOS RPRS, right? Are you getting the right people on the bus? Are the reps you're hiring, do they get it, want it, have capacity to execute it? Do they understand what's expected of them? Do they understand how to do what's expected of them? And are they going to do what's expected of them? There is a mentality for new logo sales. Like hunter is a good description. You're going to go crawl through the woods in the cold, in the dark, and shoot the deer. And you want to do it over and over and over again. That mentality and that mindset is critical. And too often people will hire someone who is great about talking about sales, but doesn't really know how to sell. And so you're looking for a certain mindset. So just kind of hiring someone because they had technology experience or God forbid managed service experience. Well, why are they going to your MSP from a different MSP? And you're paying them a 50, 60, $70,000 base, right? Like if someone's working at an MSP and they're going to come to you and they're a killer, well, you're probably paying them 100, 120, 150 in base with double or even triple of that on OTE because of an aggressive commission and bonus structure because you're getting an A player superstar. If you're able to hire someone from another MSP for 50 to 80 grand, you're hiring a dud. I'd be willing to bet all the money in my wallet on it too. So
Do you have any
that's
money in your wallet?
yeah, it looks like $20. And so this is probably a great place to kind of wrap up on this. There's one final question I think that I should ask you, Carrie, and yeah, like the high level answer on it. But is it time to outsource lead generation for your MSP? Like let's give people an answer to the title question. Like, is it time to outsource lead gen for MSPs? What's your answer?
No, no. I think there are some very specific times when it makes sense to outsource lead generation for your MSP. So if these things exist, then yes, it's time to outsource. And I'll list them in what I think the order of importance is. Like one, you are financially stable and able to take a risk on something that might have no return on investment for 6 to 12 months. Two, you've got a well-defined internal process that you are able to share with the third party that you're going to hire, whether that is an agency, a contractor, an overseas Fiverr person, like whoever it is that you're going to engage to make these outbound calls or complete these outbound activities. You're able to share with them what your business does, how it's different. You've got a clear ICP. So you sell specific things at a fixed price on a recurring basis to a specific industry. It's a lot easier to teach somebody one talk track than it is to teach 30 talk tracks. So if you're trying to sell everything to everyone, and you haven't yet refined a pitch for a specific ICP, outsourcing means you're going to generate leads that go nowhere. Now, you need a very tightly defined ICP, and you need to understand accountability and be able to have uncomfortable conversations with that third party vendor. So if you don't have time to manage a sales rep, you don't have time to manage a third party vendor either. It takes the same amount of meetings, accountability conversations, and back and forth appointment scheduling time as it would for you to have an internal provider. So you cannot set and forget appointment setting. So you've got to have money, you've got to have a process, you've got to have available time on your calendar right now that you can spend coaching and meeting with the third party vendor and the leadership of that third party vendor, especially when something isn't going well. So coming to a weekly meeting where you haven't reviewed what happened last week is a waste of your time and their time. So you have to have enough time to review metrics. You have to understand what you're looking for within those metrics. So understanding how to read a call report, that's an important skill. If you've never seen one before, you're going to want to talk to somebody about that before you start receiving reports that mean nothing to you. If the only thing you care about is meetings, it's probably not a good idea to outsource. Meetings are the byproduct of a well-followed process. The data that's collected on the way to those meetings is far more important than any meeting a third party vendor is going to schedule for you. So you want to know about ownership of data, who maintains it, who owns it, what happens to it at the end of the campaign. If you're paying on a per lead basis, which is something I would never recommend, and if somebody's selling you leads for a price, The only thing you're going to learn is this company is looking. You're not going to figure out how that was determined, right? Are they looking and was that lead sold to 20 other MSPs in your area? Right? So learning how to have uncomfortable conversations with vendors, super important skill. If you're not doing that with vendors currently, I guarantee you there's going to be at least one conversation you don't want to have with your third party vendor. So is it time to outsource your lead generation? Money, time, process.
So really what Carrie just said is the consultant's favorite answer. It
It
depends.
depends.
So to give some good expectations, Carrie mentioned we've got a couple of resources for anyone who showed up or registered. Tyler will get this we'll get your registration details over. Tyler will send you an email with both of those attached. Appreciate everyone showing up. If you want to have a conversation, you have some questions you didn't that didn't get answered or are looking for some clarifications, go ahead and reach out to Tyler. He can definitely get you some answers. We're also happy to hop on a call and provide whatever value we can with you. And this is kicking off a series of webinars that Carrie and I are conversations, really master classes, I guess, that Carrie and I will be having. Carrie, when's our next one coming up in April?
April 16th at
1 p.m.
1 p.m.
Eastern, yeah.
Eastern.
Yep. So everyone who's on, we'll run through that and have a conversation there. And thanks for tuning in and joining us today.
Yeah, if you're watching this on demand and you'd like a copy of the materials, you can head on over to the Fox and Crow Group website at foxcrowgroup.com and fill out a form on the website. Let us know what information you're interested in receiving, and somebody will get back to you with those attached.
All right. Take
Have a
care,
great day,
all.
everyone.